to this panel session that we're really excited to have pulled together for you to chat about making sustainability a winning B2B growth strategy. This is day 2 of 3 days of amazing sessions that we've pulled together that really get at how we go from sort of great intentions around climate to great actions. And with this particular panel session, I'm really thrilled to introduce you to 4 incredible leaders in this space. And we're going to be moderated in this panel session by Jenna Leiner, who comes to us from AWS. So Jenna was recently appointed Sustainability Business Advisor Lead at APAC for AWS, which follows her previous role as Commercial Lead of Enterprise Pursuits, Strategic Pursuits ANZ within AWS. After making her debut into the workforce as a chartered accountant, so she can talk a lot about the importance of data, no doubt, Jenna. She took her unapologetic Australian attitude to the UK, where she worked with global organisations, including Amazon, to deliver cost out initiatives and supply chain optimization. So again, super relevant to our conversations today about climate and sustainability. Since returning home, she's spent the last several years working with Australian and New Zealand enterprises to enable digital transformation on the AWS cloud. Recognising the value that can be found at the intersection of technology and sustainability in her new role, Jenna will partner with organisations to leverage this opportunity to decarbonise their operations in a real and measurable way. And that was one of the themes that came up in our last panel session with Jared at Canva, who talked about the way that he's partnering with AWS to help decarbonise Canva's operations. So without further ado, I'd love to hand over to Jenna to introduce the panel for today's discussion. Thanks, Jenna.
Great, thank you so much, Kate, and thank you so much for that introduction. Hi everyone, welcome wherever you're joining us from, and thank you for being here to discuss how to make sustainability a winning B2B growth strategy. I am honoured to introduce some of our esteemed panellists today. So first we have Katherine McConnell. Katherine is the founder and CEO of BRIGHTE, a sustainable homes platform, helping Australians bring home the benefits of solar energy to accelerate the power shift to the home. Since launching in 2015, the company has processed over 1 billion worth of loan applications from more than 100,000 Australian homeowners and reduced household CO2 emissions each year by more than 500,000 tonnes. In 2018 and 2021, Katherine was named Australia's Outstanding FinTech Leader of the Year, and in 2020, BRIGHTE became the 6th fastest growing tech company in Australia. So welcome, Katherine. Next, we have Ben Burge. Ben has been involved in some epic and humiliating failures across 6 industries and 3 continents. He has picked fights with bullies, regularly tested his faith in democracy, and occasionally got lucky in the all-consuming religion, and that it is, of a startup. These days, Ben spends his time as a member of the Telstra Energy team. So Ben, I'm not sure that we're going to have time to delve into each and every one of those epic failures, but I'm hoping the audience gains some insight into some of your biggest lessons learned. Finally, we're joined by Eva Ross, Chief Marketing and Customer Success Officer at SENDLE. SENDLE is Australia's first 100% carbon neutral shipping carrier and Technology B Corporation. SENDLE helps small e-commerce businesses thrive through delivery that is simple, reliable, and affordable. And Eva was actually previously at Airbnb, running the APAC marketing operations and strategy, and has a wealth of business and creative experience helping startups navigate rapid growth at scale. So Eva, you sound really well placed and up to the task of today's topic. Welcome. So carrying on from what Kate said, I encourage all of you to pop some questions into the chat as we move through the conversation. Can't promise that we'll get to all of them in the next 45 minutes, but the fabulous team from Blackbird will ensure they do come through to me. Right, let's open up the discussion. This is addressed to all 3 of you. Each of you have experience in building a business that aims to tackle some part of the sustainability challenge. Katherine, through enabling solar, Ben, through energy, Eva, through supply chains. I'm really interested to understand why that part of the problem, what compelled you to go there when sustainability is just so broad. Katherine, if we can start with you.
Fantastic, thank you. Thanks, Jenna. So I believe that there is a huge infrastructure transition that's about to take place, and power to date has been centrally generated, primarily in large coal stacks and other non-renewable energy fuel sources. And I believe that power is going to shift to the home, and a lot of homes will soon be able to generate, store their own power, and that power will not only fuel their homes but also fuel their cars. And so it's this huge infrastructure transition that's about to take place. And it's quite interesting because it's not, it's going to be moving to the home, and those homes are going to have to buy that energy infrastructure from small businesses, you know, from car manufacturers. And so what we're seeing is a requirement effectively for financing. So financing to be able to enable this infrastructure transition. So homes who contribute about 40% of national carbon emissions, they need to find a way to decarbonise. So they need to generate their own energy, they need to store that energy, and they need to find new equipment in their home and new vehicles to drive. And so effectively, why this problem is exciting, why it compels me, is because all of my experience in asset and equipment finance, my experience in dealing with intermediaries to be able to get products to consumers or third parties, I've been able to use to be able to create products, you know, build up an amazing team to be able to solve these really complex problems that will accelerate the transition to a clean energy future. So yeah, it's exciting because I'm using my skills. It's exciting because it's real and it's urgent, and it compels me because it's complex, because there are so many parts of providing credit, through intermediaries, through end households, that can provide such value. And I think it's a once in a generation opportunity we have to solve some really big problems.
I love that, Katherine. And I think as an audience or listening to you speak, you feel empowered as a business owner and someone who potentially would work with your company, but also as an individual, because you're kind of bringing power to the people. And really that high percentage that you said comes from households. We have an ability as individuals and as citizens to drive part of the agenda, which is just fantastic. Thank you for that. Eva, how about yourself at SENDLE?
Yeah, I mean, we've all experienced the changes in e-commerce through the pandemic, right? First of all, we had so many more buyers, like folks who'd never bought online suddenly discovered this new way of shopping. And then we saw more sellers. I think in 2020, 52% of the customers that joined SENDLE were side hustlers or new businesses that really just getting started. If you have a look at the US at the moment, every second 5,000 packages are delivered in the United States, and that volume is just incredible, right? And it's not changing. I think by 2030, we'll see something like 36% more delivery vehicles on the roads. And of course, the Earth really can't sustain that real impact. So I think for my passion specifically for small businesses really falls to the idea that often these are the ones that are really underserved, and they're often folks that feel perhaps less empowered to make change. So if we can help, by decarbonizing the industry, by offsetting their footprint and kind of showing them the way that they're able to do that themselves, that's very powerful to me, and something that I'm really passionate about.
Absolutely. And given the number of packages that I bought during COVID and then subsequently sent back, I'm really grateful for your services. I'm keen, Eva, just to stay on you for a second. You mentioned, it was mentioned in the introduction that SENDLE is Australia's first 100% carbon neutral shipping company, which is a fantastic milestone. But does that go far enough in your eyes?
Yeah, I think, we've really, I suppose, morphed that goal over time. We're seeing more and more folks come to the idea of sustainability and carbon offsetting. And we've since, set a goal of net zero in 2030, and we're looking at the process of decarbonisation. So in 2019, we joined 500 B Corps in that mission. And that number is now 1 million B Corps are committed to net zero in 2030. So it's just incredible to see that movement. So no, it's not enough. But I also think that inaction is certainly the enemy of progress. So looking at what else we can do.
That's fantastic. Great to hear that you're progressing that goal. And I'm keen just to hear, so where did you feel that, was there a pressure to go further? And was it coming from customers, stakeholders, your leadership team, or was it just something that you as a business knew that you had to do?
Well, we've seen such an interesting transition, right? So I think people used to associate green with more expensive. And so often, every package delivered was carbon neutrally delivered. But we wouldn't talk about it because the consumer often associated with that a higher cost. These days, that has just shifted so much, where people want to really deeply understand how you're offsetting, what projects you're involved in, what's next. People are acutely aware of the idea of greenwashing, and how do they know what's real? How do they know what's accredited and verified? And I think that consumer push has shifted our approach and said, right, what else can we do? What more can we do? But I mean, I suppose inherent in our business model is the idea that we're filling up the underutilized capacity of a truck. So really, that in itself and shifting more volume into a more efficient system is driving that base change.
Absolutely. It's really interesting to think through going back several years when this wasn't the topic of the day, when we were working on cost optimization, right? To reduce cost in a business is critical. And I think it's also, you would have, if you did a case study around that, you would have seen that impact and that dual impact on decarbonisation as well. So it's great that the decarbonisation conversation is a lot of times coming first now, which is brilliant. Thank you, Eva. Ben, let's move on to yourself. So you've moved directly from directly influencing access to more renewable energy sources into Telstra, one of Australia's largest and most iconic businesses. Talk to us why that shift, and how is that challenge around focusing on energy different, going from that direct influence through to one of the biggest Australian companies?
So I think in 2030, my kids are going to look at me and say, what did you do, Dad? So whatever future we face, they're going to sort of say, did you do your best? And so that's kind of the lens through which I look at these opportunities. To Eva's point, energy represents this fantastic intersection of economic outcomes and climate outcomes, where it's not anyone who's sort of getting into a debate of, oh, can we afford to do this, is sort of missing the point. So the connectedness of physics, economics, and customer psychology is writ large in relation to this challenge, right? So, and in particular, energy is a great one because it gives us that opportunity to transform a sustainability discussion into a commodity exposure discussion, right? So a few years back, Telstra was hit with a $100 million increase in its bill. We're kind of, we're a pretty big energy user, right? We're like 300,000 homes rolled into one, right? So when the bill goes up, we notice. And that pain is experienced, when we experience pain, then customers are experiencing pain. And so, and getting into your sort of, neck of the woods, Jenna, this is a non-linear equation. Right. So actually, we're faced with a future that will be characterised by energy abundance for most of the time. Right. And Australia has a fantastic opportunity to reinforce its status as an energy superpower. Right. The 20th century was sort of characterised by digging shit out of the ground and burning it in order to create energy. The 21st century is going to be characterised by doing creating energy from renewable sources, but also, if you take it further, we'll be sucking carbon out of the atmosphere and sticking it in the ground, right? So it's a reversal of that sort of, the transition happens at multiple levels, right? So I think a deep fascination with how is it all connected is absolutely critical to accelerating that plan.
Brilliant. And you mentioned there Australia, and I listened to that as a collective. Do you think that governments are helping businesses such as Telstra and people joining us today to really amplify the impacts that they're having in this space?
I think waiting around to get a hand up is number one, futile, and I think number two, often distracts us from the essence of the economic equation that people have the opportunity to unlock, right? So I think. Particularly if you look at the pattern of regulatory changes and changes to certification schemes, et cetera, my one kind of encouragement to this group is that you're agile enough, you're nimble enough, you're small enough, you can move quickly enough. Keep your eyes on the physical equation at a global level, right? Because local and regional policy regimes will change, right? So the idea that I'm going to get the perfect combination of policy settings that will underpin my business model, not a particularly good strategy. Whereas if you focus on, what is the nature of the economic equation into which you're inserting yourself, and how is it connected to the businesses of others? And again, trying to shift it back to, how do you put your hat on as a treasury operative or a trading operative or someone who's in the sort of the seat of the CFO, managing long-term exposure to what is the most, in relation to electricity as an example, it's the most volatile commodity on planet Earth. Right now, anyone who loves data, that is like that's a dream. That's a dream. Where there is volatility, there is opportunity, and it usually speaks to things like capacity constraint, which is the ideal sort of challenge for which new angles of attack are well suited. And so that's why we love working with startups, because we know that as a massive organisation, we've got this massive footprint, so we can, when we get the ship turned in the right direction, we can really make some headway. But we also rely heavily on partners, and particularly in the startup world, who are able to move quicker, and particularly where we're able to share risk and take on some sort of gnarly problems where we know that sometimes we're going to fail, right? But failing well is obviously a key ingredient to progress in the long term.
Absolutely. And you mentioned in there the large footprint of Telstra and coming from Amazon. I really appreciate that in our pursuit to be net zero by 2040. Tell me and tell the audience, does Telstra have it all stitched up when it comes to knowing how you're going to fully decarbonise your business?
No, why would we? Why would we know? And why would we wait until we've got it perfectly planned out? For a couple of reasons. One, there's almost no business plan on the planet where we've got all the answers, right? And there's almost no business plan on the planet where every assumption that underpinned it turned out to be right. What we know is that we're going to get things wrong, right? That's part of the process. And in fact, just on the one thing that I think's really critical for this audience is that an obsession with the ridiculous is a very powerful thing. Right, so most of the economy is asleep at the wheel on this issue, right? And so people are sort of, you've got people who want to push out and lead. You've got people who are sort of waiting to see what's the minimum I can do, right, at least possible costs. And then you've got people who haven't really looked into the issue, right? So being asleep at the wheel is actually one of the biggest risks that we're trying to address. An obsession with the ridiculous creates the opportunity for cognitive dissonance and people to just kind of reset the way they think about stuff. And so, as an example, I think I don't know if Phoebe Gardner from BRIGHTE in the audience today, but basically the chat I started with her was, hey, how can we use maggot shit in our own value chain to accelerate the decarbonisation of Telstra and the economy? Right now, I can't talk about some of the stuff that we're getting into because it's confidential, but she had me at maggot shit. Like that's the sort of stuff we need to bring into the boardroom, into executive ranks, to actually kind of give them a reason and an ability to engage with these economic value chains that are being dramatically transformed, right? But in ways that are quite esoteric unless you kind of bring some of these really tangible ideas to the table. So quick shout out to Phoebe if she's there. Thank you.
Phoebe, I hope you're on and listening to the topic. No, that's really fair. And I think I'm going to throw to a question coming in from the audience from Nick, because it's kind of tied to that asleep at the wheel theme that you mentioned. So how soon will pressure on Scope 3 emissions have a real impact on businesses and an impact that people just can't ignore anymore, do you think?
Was that to Ben or was that to anyone?
Apologies, sorry, to Ben. Sorry, I did sorry. Briefly.
Oh, look, it's already here. It's already here. I think there's that academic discussion around, well, if my Scope 3 is someone else's Scope 2 or Scope 1, who's double counting, et cetera, et cetera. Bottom line is you've got to apply pressure at every level of the supply chain. Right, and to the extent that we're not imposing pressure on our key partners, then we're doing more of the heavy lifting, and that's. Again, that's one of the features of the Australian system at the moment, is that all of the heavy lifting is actually concentrated among what is largely a group of volunteers, corporate volunteers, right? And so actually our job is to part of our job is to broaden the base, because we know it's coming. Like in the long run, it is coming, right? So we've seen. Even overnight, the prospects of border adjustment taxes becoming a reality into Europe. It's like, well, yeah, we can decide whatever, you know, local scheme, or, you know, different regions can decide whatever local scheme, you know, they're going to have in the medium term. But ultimately, you know, the externality that is, you know, failed to be priced for too long, it's coming to get us. Anyone who's, you know, trade exposed or you know, export substitution exposed, it is now part of your, you know, your supply chain. Full stop.
Absolutely. And Eva, I'm keen to hear your thoughts on this, going through to that kind of next level of your goal around net zero. Have you started engaging with your upstream and downstream in the supply chain to talk about scope 3? And are they receptive? Are they coming to the table?
Very much so. I mean, it's sort of like, where can we take responsibility now, and like, how can we influence the industry, and how is that going to change, right? So obviously we need to look at the last mile, what we can do in terms of electric vehicles. We've already brought on solar electric vehicles in Sydney and are doing deliveries that way. And of course, we engage our community in terms of the way that we're looking at offsets and afforestation projects and all of that sort of thing. But I do think it, you know, it extends to government. It also extends kind of industry-wide. SENDLE went out and challenged, I suppose, what is the biggest provider in the industry of parcel delivery, that is Australia Post. And we ran this campaign in which you could stick a SENDLE sticker onto a parcel, and no matter who was delivering it, we were going to carbon offset it. And incredibly, after 18 days of campaigning, Australia Post did come to the party and started to offset some of their business and post office deliveries, which is just, I think, incredible to be able to drive an industry change at that level with a campaign like that. So I think, you know, to me, that's very inspiring that, you know, small businesses can make such change at any level. But in terms of the decarbonisation journey, we certainly don't have it all figured out. I think in other areas of the business, we set a goal and then figure out how to get there. I, in many ways, don't think that this should be any different. And, you know, I think that the very deep green movement can almost hold us paralysed a little bit in terms of taking the approach. And what we really need to do is put those goals out there and start investigating how.
Absolutely, start the conversation. I love that. Katherine, I want to go to you. We're talking about B2B, which obviously is further up the chain when it comes to end consumer. I'm keen to hear on any advice or any lessons that you've learned when it comes to communicating your sustainability credentials to your customers. So obviously in solar, you're an enabler of some really great things, but how are you, as a business, how are you effectively communicating your credentials to your customers?
Yeah, so we deal with both the household and the business. So we see ourselves as a B2B2C effectively. And so I guess both of the groups of customers have different views, and there are different subsets, you know, in households and also businesses as far as what they think about BRIGHTE, what they think about our sustainability credentials, but ultimately how that impacts them to be able to take action, or how that impacts them to be able to, you know, progress to be able to access to buy solar or to buy batteries. So we always talk about sustainability benefits and always link them with affordability benefits for customers. So firstly, when we put the proposition to our customers, be it the business or be it the household, we never just talk about our sustainability benefits or what we're doing internally to align to net zero, or we've just changed our energy provider, or we've just moved to, you know, use Part Zero to be able to assess our, you know, carbon emissions within the business. So we find those credentials are probably a baseline or just a minimum, but what's expected is what's in it for me. So what's the problem I'm facing? And so we find that customers, both the businesses and the households, definitely sustainability is a motivating factor, but the biggest thing that actually rates for them is firstly the affordability. How can I afford it? What's in it for me? Like, how's it all going to work? Once those first order problems are solved for the household or the business, then they start to look at, okay, so, you know, what are your sustainability credentials? What is this going to do for the environment? And so I think it's still, our experience is it's still at that stage. It's not just on our sustainability credentials alone. We have to provide a solution, show how they can take action, and then it's a second order issue. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, but it is really important to think about how you solve problems and how you accelerate sustainable homes, or how you accelerate the pathway to decarbonisation. It can't just be about credentials. It really has to be about solving problems, solving friction, and showing customers, what they're going to gain out of this transition.
Yeah, it actually goes really well to a question that we've got in from Amelia, who says sustainability is still viewed as a cost in most businesses, and what is the best way to educate the market or internally on the long-term benefits of acting now? And I think that speaks to, Katherine, your first point around they need to understand what's in it for them. Where have you seen that be done well or not so much, and what advice can you give in that space?
Yeah, so for households, it's always around how well you can communicate the concept of payback. And so when households look at transitioning to renewable energy or sustainable energy equipment in their home, there's always the concept of, what's the upfront cost, and over time, how much am I going to save? So what's the impetus to push me to take action? And so I think wherever I see it done best is always where it's communicating to the customer. Not only is there no financial impact, there's actually a financial gain for you. There's a financial saving. And then secondly, when you do this, it creates empowerment for you. It gives you more power, it gives you more control over your life, over your household, over your business. And so when I see those 2 points communicated best, be it in documents, be it in videos that are provided to customers, but that's what really solves the customer's first order problem. And once you can move that out of the picture, then they can start looking at, okay, so what is it I have to do? What is it I have to change? And so really removing that pain for the customer, be it a business and their priorities around their cash flow, or be it for a household and their priorities around their household budget. And so every dollar counts. And so once you can show that this transition is actually going to be, save them money. We have customers where it makes them money, and they use this money to be able to pay for, for other things in their home, like holidays or, swimming lessons for their kids. And so once they see that this transition, it's just about some time they've got to commit. But the other factors you can really take out of the equation, then they can start to invest that time. If you also give them the assurance that, they can trust you, that you're not going to take advantage of their time, you're going to make it an easy experience, then you can really, present those credentials that you have, and also have high confidence that you can provide a solution to those customers.
Fantastic. It's all about trust by the sounds of it. Ben, Eva, did you have anything to add on that point, building on Katherine?
I just think it's very interesting how the stakeholders internally and externally have changed, right? I think often this was something that sat in the marketing department. Ben's talked about the convergence of sort of physics and maths and how that's now moving into the CFO's realm. I think we're also seeing, huge benefits of employer brand, and that sort of removes into the chief people person type space. So, really at all levels of the company, there's a lot of buy-in internally. Actually, my colleague slacked me a fun fact the other day. OkCupid did a study, and it said for 9 out of 10 people, the biggest deal breaker for a match would be that someone didn't rate climate change as important for them. So really, we're seeing it
every aspect,
in every area.
Oh my gosh, that's really good to know for budding romantics in the audience. Fantastic. Ben, how about yourself? I'm keen to pick up on a point Eva raised there about internal and going kind of looking upwards to convince people in your own business that it's an important thing to do. How have you seen that play out within Telstra?
So it's not been without challenges, right? So I think the point I made earlier about turning it into not a sustainability discussion, but a financial risk discussion, that made a really big difference. Pushing in and doing a deal that we could, or a couple of deals that we could control. So we've underwritten utility scale projects now that produce the equivalent of about 150,000 homes worth of fossil fuel consumption, right? So eating our own dog food, and then shown that was a profitable exercise. I'm not sure that metaphor really works, profitability in dog food, but you know what I mean. So as soon as that became a thing that we could prove, that sort of built appetite, right? And it then kind of added a really powerful kind of additional angle on, you know, any part of the sustainability discussion, because actually what particularly with large organisations, you're either trying to interrupt the way that they have thought about things for many decades, right? Or you're trying to, you know, jump on some momentum that's been built around, you know, a recent realisation, right? And so for me, the thing that I get most excited about is the existence of risk, because it represents opportunity, right? Wherever there is risk, those who are prepared to sort of, you know, understand it better, take on a position, and put some money and resource behind their sort of view of the world, that's where value is really created, right? So, and I think it comes back to this idea that you know, the question is, you know, should you pursue sustainability as a B2B, as part of your B2B strategy? I would say, well, we're all in it, right? If you're involved in a business that is, you know, targeted with, you know, creating economic value, or somehow shaping the way that you know, economic activity occurs, you are in the business of sustainability, right? So it's just you know, getting really crisp around you know, how does the maths work? If you can get, you know, and to you know, Katherine's point, right? I think, you know, different stakeholders have different levels of appetite to understand or care. And in fact, you know, in consumer land, we've often fallen foul of this, you know, temptation to treat customers as coin-operated machines, and they're not, right? And oftentimes the price signal that is available, or the you know, the materiality of the price signal that we can put in front of a you know, B2C customer is more likely to piss them off than to get them to, you know, change their behaviour, right? And so we've got to be really sort of, you know, use our judgment as to when are we appealing to, you know, financial versus non-financial drivers in terms of behaviour. And also, I think as corporates, try and get to the position where you're sort of changing people's behaviour in a way that you know, delivers financial value to them in order to change their mind, rather than saying, well, I'm going to change your mind so that I'm going to get you to change your behaviour. It takes too long, and you're not taking on enough risk. Take on more risk to push it through on behalf of the customer, make it good for them, make sure they don't lose money, and you know, recognise that, you know, we've got to really, you've got to take on the risk. That's the key theme.
So I mean, with that though, it's inherently risky to do so. So where has it gone wrong? And this is to any one of you. Where have you done an initiative or started off an initiative, either operationally or through messaging, that you had to reverse and said this is just not what is the right thing to do?
Everywhere. I'll let
we've all done it.
I'll let the others go first, because
Yeah, I mean, I've got a question in the chat from someone asking about an ABC report where we were on ABC. So this isn't, you know, directly about sustainability, but it is about sustainability because it impacts trust and it impacts people's willingness to take action. And so, you know, where things go wrong, we provide products effectively for customers at their point of sale. So we aren't physically at their point of sale. And so we have a lot of tools in place. We do a lot of verification, vetting, upfront, ongoing on the partners that we work with. And so, you know, we have situations from time to time where those partners don't do the right things by customers. And so, you know, there was absolutely a story where, and it made the ABC, where one of the companies we worked with had a contractor who was working for them that was using our finance products, and absolutely took advantage of customers, charged a price that was too high, and took advantage of customers who really wanted to buy solar and really needed those affordability benefits. And so, you know, when things like this happen, in this example, I spent a lot of time with that customer. So I called the customer and I found out all their issues and spoke to some of their neighbours, and we put in place, as a result, extra checks that we're doing, extra validation upfront and ongoing. And so, you know, as a business, we have ethical decisions. You know, is it about the bottom line? Is it making money, or is it about building trust? Is it about doing the right thing? And, you know, it's absolutely about doing the right thing. So you have to change your processes. It results potentially in the short term, some short-term revenue, you know, that you lose by, you know, moving people off the platform or making it stricter and harder to actually use you. But in the long term, it builds trust, it builds reputation. And in the industry, it is far outweighed by the benefits. So yeah, always learning, always seeing fires and issues. Ultimately, everything impacts the trust of the sustainability industry if that's where you're operating and that's where you're supposed to be creating trust. So yeah, that's my experience.
Yeah, I mean, and that's a really great explanation of when we say this is a challenging journey to go on. That it's absolutely reflected in the story, Katherine, that you just shared. Thank you. Eva, thinking about carbon neutrality, you would have had to think about offsets and whether it was right or wrong or lessons learned along the way. How did you choose the right offsets to focus on?
Yeah, I mean, you know, reflecting on Katherine's point there, it's very important to involve the customer in all of this, right? And I think you know, we previously made our own selections, but we've gone on such a journey there where we now partner with South Pole and look into the projects that are available. But really, we run a program called Invest in Earth, in which case, you know, our customers choose the projects that they see best fit to be offsetting their packages with. So we'll do some pre-selection. We're obviously looking for, you know, reforestation, afforestation, anything involving the Indigenous community, these sorts of projects. But then we'll put it out to our customers and audience and have them make choices, and they always steer us in the right direction. So yeah, really bringing the customer on the journey and getting a lot of feedback is probably the biggest lesson really for us.
Absolutely. And I want to stay with you, Eva. There's another question coming in from Amelia. She's interested to hear about SENDLE's approach to reverse logistics and supporting entrepreneurs in that space, given it's such a key element of kind of that circular economy and sustainable economy. How are you approaching that?
I mean, it's fascinating, right? Because before SENDLE was SENDLE was 2Share, which was, you know, really a giving marketplace for the circular economy. The idea was you kept items out of landfill. But I think we were maybe a little bit early in the launch of that program, because these days I get many requests of folks with a circular economy idea that they want to launch on SENDLE. So it's been a very interesting and full circle journey for us. Reverse logistics is so complex because you have sort of a very complicated set of pickup points and a very complicated set of drop-off points to pull in together. So it's something that we're working on. We've launched our return service, which is sort of like an early version of what that will look like, and sort of continue to look at what's next.
I am so keen to see what's next, Eva. It's super exciting, the journey you're on towards that next iteration of your goal. So guys, we're coming up towards the bottom of the half hour, and I'm really looking for some more advice for our audience. So to each of you, what are you reading, attending, looking forward to in 2022 that keeps you informed on the all-encompassing topic of sustainability? Katherine, I'll go to you first.
I have some of the books here actually. Sorry, we're really loving The Big Switch. Saul Griff is just amazing. He's been doing a bit of a tour, and a lot of people have read this now, but it's Electrify was his other book. It's more of an American view on electrification. The Big Switch is just Australian, what we can do in Australia to be able to electrify our homes, how we can personally take action and why it's so important. And so, yeah, there's some books. Also Diggers magazine. I love Diggers. And so I think everyone should be planting trees. Everyone should be looking at how they can grow their own, their own vegetables and fruit. And then as far as podcasts, Energy Insiders is one that I don't listen to enough, but whenever I do, I learn so much about the industry. And so, yeah, that's a great podcast.
Fantastic. And David, we didn't get to your question on hearing thoughts of how to accelerate the energy transition, but it sounds like you need to pick up a copy of The Big Switch, and that will give you your answers. Eva, how about yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously love all the youth climate leaders, Greta, of course, but Lee Thomas is doing a lot more in sort of bringing together social good and social equity with environmental change. So they, are certainly folks that I'm following. The B Corp movement always has to stay ahead, and it is always ahead. Obviously, certification is a long and complex process, but I've seen a lot of people kind of take pages out of the B Corp book and apply it to their businesses. One of our customers, Eat Me Chutneys, took from the playbook of B Corp to make his first hire and his approach to talent, and I think that's a great way of doing things. And the other one is Ecoasia. It's a search engine, and they plant a tree every time you do a search. So I've switched the app on my phone from Chrome over to them.
I am doing that after this call. That's a really awesome tip. And I agree with you with B Corp. I was on their website last night, and to anyone who's thinking or wanting to know more, it's just a great landing page for a lot of resources, a lot of interesting articles and links. And so, yeah, I absolutely agree with you there. How about yourself, Ben?
I might just drop Charles Massey and Call of the Reed Warbler. Partly because I want to answer the question that someone put here around Indigenous wisdom. It's a great reminder that Aboriginal Australians have been here for 65,000 years. Right, they are the only people on the planet who actually have a true, connected, continuous sense of what does it take to survive, thrive, and grow through climate change. 6,500 years ago, prior to the construction of the pyramids, the Gunditjmara people built this thing called Burge, which has since been sort of listed for World Heritage status. That is a massive physical infrastructure system, right, of channels and ponds and all this sort of stuff, right? And physically it is impressive in and of itself, but actually the essence of what they achieved was to stretch the time for eels, stretch the season for eels. So they changed time. Right? They literally changed time. The things that were capable of being done at certain times in the season all of a sudden became possible at other times during the year, right? That was a massive catalyst for economic activity up the eastern seaboard, right? And so, when people are sort of thinking, we've got to, draw upon, world leading, knowledge, et cetera, it is right. It is at our front door, right? It's been here all along, right? And so, we are extremely grateful to have Gunditjmara woman, Thelma Austin, in our leadership team at Telstra Energy, and I can tell you that it is not an exercise in learning about Indigenous wisdom. It is an exercise in learning from Indigenous wisdom in shaping the way we view the world, the way we view business strategy, right? So I cannot kind of emphasize that enough.
I really, really love that point. And you see that everywhere in native cultures, that they're going back to their roots and wisdom because they've been on the land for millions of years, right? Guys, thank you so much. Apologies to those in the chat. Thank you for dropping in tips as well from the audience. We didn't get to everything. I implore you, we have talked about environmental sustainability today. There is social and governance as well. So keep reading, keep learning, and yeah, fill those brains. But from what I've heard today, the advice is take on risk, think differently, and everything is affected by the trust that you build. So really, some really key, critical, and practical advice coming from our panelists today. So that is a wrap. Thank you so much to my three panelists. You guys have been fantastic, very willing to bring humility to the conversation and be honest, which is really appreciated. And a big thank you for everyone joining us today. It's been a great chat, and I hope you've gleaned something from the conversation.
And I just wanted to say a big thank you again to Katherine, Ben and Eva, as Jenna said, for their honesty. It's so hard on a Zoom. We know we're all zoomed out, but what we really looked for with putting this panel together was a group of people who are willing to speak the truth about what it actually looks like to build a business from the ground up with sustainability in mind. And I think we got that today. I wanted to really thank Jenna as well for a phenomenal and expert sort of moderation of this panel. And AWS is doing a lot to help its customers kind of get up this sort of mountain that we all need to climb around climate and sustainability. So the final thing I thought I would just say before we all close out is tell people a little bit about what's happening tomorrow on our third and final day of this Impact Summit. So as you know, we've kind of looked today to the experts, the founders and the senior operators in teams that are doing this really, really well. And I hope you've gleaned a lot of useful ideas about what to do, how to think about it, and to take more risk and build trust. Tomorrow, we're going to be looking to the future. So we're going to start the day with a session with some of the world's leading climate tech investors, talking to them about what they're looking for in the businesses that they invest in, where they see the exciting developments happening in technology. And then we'll close out the day with a conversation with Robin Denholm, who's the chair of Tesla, also of the Tech Council for Australia, and one of our operating partners here at Blackbird. She's going to be interviewed by Amelia from our team about what she thinks the next frontier of investment looks like and technology. So thank you so much to all four of you, our moderator and panelists. We really appreciate your time, and thanks everyone for joining today's session. See you tomorrow.